All right, before I start this video, I do want to say that I am sick, unfortunately, so I do probably sound under the weather in this video. But regardless, I gotta make this anyway. So, the new Berserk chapter just dropped, 369, and whole, I don't even know, like, I got no words with what happened this chapter. This chapter, it just flipped Berserk on its head with the implications it could have for the rest of the story, and I just want to talk about it. So, at the start, we leave off with chapter 368 left off, which is what seemed like these black smudge creatures coming out of the ground saying sacrifice after Griffith just came and stole Casca away from Guts again. Now, they're preaching about sacrifice over and over and over. And if you attach that with what Skull Knight is saying in the last chapter as well, he says a flaring light illuminates the land of this night. Obviously, talking about Griffith coming in and being the overall spotlight of the chapter. It is a wedge cleaving the island asunder, meaning it's cleaving it in two, it's tearing it apart, taking something out of its foundation and bringing it up. And it's even more evident when he says these beings risen from the rift are what you would call the very foundations of the island, the original masters of this place. Now, we know that this is a big magical island. It has a bunch of elves, it has a bunch of magic, all this. So what I'm going to take from this, me and my perspective of this, is what if the original masters of the island were apostles, or heck, even the God Hand? And you can even actually have further proof, if mortals are no match for them, fly from here. That's more further proof for the God Hand, because we know Guts can take on apostles, but he can't take on the God Hand. So, and Guts is mortal, of course. And they just, other lines that say, I cannot deliver all from harm, thus no other salvation awaits you. And what he says afterwards is pretty big, especially with what happens out in the next chapter of 369, and it's the collapse was destined. The collapse was destined, but to struggle against it, man's fate, it is not. So you could take that as an implication that the collapse of whatever is happening in this chapter was destined, but the fate isn't. So we don't know what man's fate is. It could just be absolutely nothing. Like, at the end of the day, this all blows over and sunshine and rainbows. But Berserk obviously is not a story like that. So what is more realistic is man's fate is not predetermined, because of the fact that you can't determine man's fate. Humanity in Berserk has always been one of mystery, clouded and surrounded in mystery. What truly makes someone human compared to the rest of the apostle, the magical beings, and gods? And what really seems like is man in Berserk, like humanity itself, can fight against fate. It's a big story point in the series, and the fact that it's not predetermined here, and even Skull Knight says so, has implications that whatever happens could either be good or bad. And honestly, with what happened in 369, I'm gonna go ahead and assume it's bad. Now speaking of, let's get to 369. So chapter 369, honestly, like I said at the start, I don't have words with what happened this chapter. It just flipped Berserk on its head. We see at the start of the chapter, Farnese is yelling and saying, Guts, where are you? And Puck is saying the ground beneath him is falling apart, but Guts can't. He's so broken from what happened. He can't even land a blow on Griffith, and he's in pain and desperate and in agony because he couldn't save Casca from Griffith once again. And that's when Skull Knight says, what a calamity. And we see the island breaking apart, destroying itself. And we see the black smudges start entering the ocean. But for whatever reason, they evaporate when they make contact with light and seawater. So that could come up with later on in the story about a good way for man to fight apostles, or whatever these black smudges are, is light and seawater, because of however they want to do, because it's purity, and however they want to do stuff like that. And then, which would be really big, because what happens later on in this chapter is massive. We actually see all the magical beings start disappearing. She even, like right here, she even says, it's time. We cannot remain in the corporal world. They all, for whatever reason, start disappearing, and we have no answer as to why. All of them. All of the magical creatures start disappearing. Now, so we don't know if it's magic creatures or magic in general that is getting erased from Berserk, because we don't see anything of it. And like I've already mentioned, if that's the case, then humans are basically going to be fodder. And what is another thing too is we don't know if Shirake can use her magic now. If Shirake can't use her magic, the amount of implications for the story that leaves is no longer will Guts have a sort of way out with the Berserker armor. So either he's going to have to find some way to master the Berserker armor, or in a fight with Griffith or other apostles he can't handle, the Berserker armor is going to take control of Guts, and little by little, he might continue losing his humanity. And I do want to go back on one of the things that was said, with the implication that magic itself could be gone. The statement where it's, but those slimy black things seem to act like haze. They evaporate after contact with light and seawater, which could be an implication how they could be beaten if those truly are apostles, or any some sort of way with the remnant of God Hand. Is we always see the God Hand in some sort of dark shroud, always covered in darkness, except for Griffith. Griffith is the only one that's always broadcasted as light, always pure, and when he's not Femto, of course. And I do think that could be some way to beat the God Hand, is by purity, and that is, for whatever reason, a massive potential weakness we just got in this chapter for the God Hand in general, but we don't know how it could be in play. Again, that's assuming if there's no magic at all, but I do think something like that will come up again, because I don't think Berserk is the kind of story to leave, oh, here's a weakness for these mythical creatures that we'll probably never use again. I don't think Berserk is going to do something like that. I think it's honestly idiotic if they did, but I don't think it has a storytelling like that to make a mistake like that. And this chapter just leaves further things going forward. It leaves so much on the table now. What's going to happen if all the magic's gone, and what's going to happen if we still have magic but no magical being? Like, it's so much is open and for interpretation, and so much is just on the table right now that Berserk, in my humble opinion, just got spun on its head. And in fact, if we want to even take it further, if all magical creatures are gone but apostles are still here, then that means apostles aren't part of, like, the magical creatures. They're not like something that humans, they're not like, because magical creatures, you kind of always get the implication that, like, apostles were, like, different. Magical creatures, at least from what I can remember, because it's been a hot minute, but from what I can remember, were always implied to be, like, hand-to-hand with apostles and then the God Hand. If all magical creatures are gone, but the God Hand and apostles are still here, which is very heavily implied because Griffith is still here, could mean that the apostles are something completely different and they don't rely on anything like how magical creatures rely on magic. So we have to just assume that we got some massive implications and subtle implications of the God Hand being completely different from anything in Berserk right now. And honestly, I will say, what a great thing this chapter did debunk was Guts being, like, half-elf. Because there was this weird theory in the Berserk community that where, like, Guts is a half-elf because of, like, oh, he's always somehow met an elf, like a little fairy, and he has pointed ears. With magical beings gone, then that means that Guts probably isn't, like, at least any sort of related to magical creatures, because he doesn't seem unaffected. He seems unaffected. But that's all I gotta say. We are probably going to be saying goodbye for Puck for a while, if not forever. Goodbye, Puck. You will be missed. But with everything that happened in this chapter, it just add it to the pile of papers that's, oh my fucking god, shit's going down. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. I'll let you guys go down below, like, comment, subscribe. What do you guys think is happening in this Berserk chapter? Because right now, I'm absolutely floored. Anyway, I'll catch y'all next time.